Hey everyone, we are back with another episode of Can't Stop Snapping. As always, thanks for tuning in once again. We've been a little behind on releasing episodes, so I appreciate your patience. Before we jump into today's conversation with our guest host, just wanted to take a minute to update on a couple of things. Today is July 19th when I'm recording this, and there's a new patch live for the game. Today's episode is actually going to cover the contents of the patch notes, so we'll be diving in and be sharing our thoughts about that. One of the new things with this patch is Nexus Events. That's something we've kind of hinted at, kind of a new way to obtain cards. We'll highlight that slightly as we just touch on it in the patch notes, but we will be having another episode coming out later that will be diving into changes to the collection system overall, the addition of Nexus Events, and kind of revisiting, again, kind of the topic of monetization, progression, etc., and sharing some thoughts with another guest host. So that will be coming in a later episode, just so you know. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you're following the podcast. As always, I'm going to give a shout out. Please follow us on Twitter at can't_stop_snap. Trying to hit 100 followers there on Twitter. We're in the 70s. Once we hit 100, I'm hoping to do some kind of a giveaway. So if you have yet to follow us there, make sure to go follow us there on Twitter. With all of that being said, once again, thank you for listening and tuning in. And let's jump into today's episode. Hey everybody, we are back with another episode of Can't Stop Snapping. As mentioned in the intro to the episode, we will be covering the patch notes from July 19th today. That's when we're recording this. I'm joined by a returning guest host, Lootmuncher. As you remember, Lootmuncher has been streaming the game on Twitch, has been sharing his thoughts about the game, etc., building some awesome decks, showing the world how good Arrow is as a card. Lootmuncher, thanks for being on the show again.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, Arrow's underrated. Everyone play it more.
Yeah, no, I've caught some of your streams and I've been converted. I've been convinced. So make sure to check that out. So as we're diving in here, we're just going to kind of highlight some of the things. We'll dive probably the most in depth on the cards, the card changes. There's some interesting ones. There was ones I was expecting, ones I was not. I'm excited to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, there's a lot of surprises.
Yeah, some stuff that I didn't quite see coming. So, well, first off, we're just going to touch high level on some of these things. There is a new feature in the game, and that is Nexus Events. The description reads, Nexus Events are limited time events that offer new cards, variants, avatars, and more. They're available in the shop and can be purchased with gold. And there is a blog that goes more into depth. Again, listeners will be covering this more in depth in a new episode. But I guess high level, it's essentially loot boxes, which I think we knew that was coming, but I think I was expecting a little bit more. Lootmuncher, I don't know if you have some initial thoughts on what you've seen and experienced thus far with the Nexus Events.
Yeah, I haven't dove into them. I did read it. My first thought is they don't look great. The initial cost, I think it's like 180 gold. Mm-hmm. That seems pretty small, but it's like 1,800 for a pull of 10 and a lot of stuff. It seems like you can sink a lot of money into it, and I don't know how I feel about that. I was hoping that it was going to be some kind of event. I don't know if you're familiar with Magic the Gathering, but Arena, their online client, they have something where people can like enter in for gold in-game currency, and they can play until they get like 7 wins or like 2 losses, whichever comes first, and then you get rewards based off of that. I was actually hoping it was something like that.
Yeah.
And you get higher chances of getting rewards for more wins or something, but loot boxes, not super thrilled about them.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping the similar thing. I know, Legends of Runeterra has also had something similar to Magic the Gathering. It's slightly different, right? But yeah, kind of you pay to enter, but you get to play the game, right? But you're kind of targeting doing it in a certain way or unlocking, through play. I did kind of my initial. I did the 1,800 for 10 pulls, and I got a bunch of credits, some boosters, and a destroyer user icon. Which hey, I will say I got a lot of credits, but it felt kind of bad. Anyway, we won't spend too much time on the topic, but yeah. So thus far, I guess I would say I'm not that excited about it, but Diving in here into the general updates, a couple of things. Collector's caches. So they've essentially changed how progression on the collection level works. Again, we'll kind of hit this at a high level, but essentially they've replaced the mystery cards and the mystery rewards, which could be either gold, credits, or a variant, to replace them with what's called collector's caches and collector's reserve caches. So these are kind of like the mystery rewards as they were before, but now you either pull a card, you pull a variant art, or you can pull credits or gold, I believe. But the gold and credit amounts are higher than they were before.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first looked at this, as I was reading through the patch notes earlier, I was like, oh, that just doesn't feel good. But then I got a bunch of credits, obviously, from doing the Nexus event, and I unlocked a couple of these, and I got 2 cards, and I got a variant art from them.
You had way better luck than me. I had 3 saved up, and I popped all 3 of them, and I got 2 avatars and 200 gold.
Oh, well, there you go. I guess probability, right? So I was feeling pretty good, but you kind of my eyes. Maybe I shouldn't feel too good too yet. Maybe I just got the luck. I guess I should say, did you already have Killmonger and I'm trying to remember the other card. We'll get
Sandman.
to Sandman. Did you already have both those cards?
I have Killmonger, not Sandman. I was hoping out of those 3 I'd get Sandman, and I didn't.
That's interesting because the first one I opened, I got Killmonger.
Yeah.
So yeah, a little interesting. Anyway, we'll dive into that a little bit more. But I guess time will tell. It sounds like we both unlocked 3. I had great luck. You had not so great luck.
Yeah.
But I think it's a small sample size, right? After we've unlocked maybe 10, 20 of these, I think we'll have a better idea. But I guess, what are your general thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to open some more and see how it goes. It definitely is a feel bad. I know not everyone's in the same situation I am, but, they said there were going to be changes coming. So I just kind of held off. I had a couple things saved up. So I got to open 3 of them as soon as the changes happened. One of them was a new card due. So one of my new cards changed into an avatar or 200 gold. That didn't feel great, knowing that I was, guaranteed a card before. And now I didn't. But they said, in the notes, they're supposed to, because it says 1,500 collection level, that you're basically doubling your rate of cards getting, and I'm over 2,000. So in theory, I should be getting double the rates of cards. But in this situation, it definitely felt bad.
Yeah, totally get that. And my understanding from some comments in the Discord from the developers is that there is kind of a pity timer, meaning so like there's some, it is random, but like, okay, if you have 2 people that are both at collection level 2,000 that have been going through this new structure of progression, you're going to have unlocked within a variance of maybe 1 or 2 cards the same amount of cards. So it's not like they're, so-and-so is going to have, they unlocked 30 cards and you only lock 10, right? They're going to, it's built into the averages that everybody over the same amount of time will almost always unlock the same amount of cards, which I think is good.
Yeah, if we both did 100 collection levels, we both should hit 10 cards or whatever that number is.
Yeah, exactly.
It shouldn't be crazy.
So my next 3 polls may be gold and avatars, and yours may be, 2 cards in a variant, right?
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to see. Up next, a couple of things that are more kind of visual UI focused. We've got card emojis. You can now leave emoji responses on cards after they've been played. So that's interesting. The next one, I don't know if you've upgraded any of your cards since the update, but they've upgraded the visuals and sound effects for when you upgrade cards. It's kind of gone 0 to 60. Many more effects and sounds. Have you done it yet?
I have not.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. It almost feels like too much. I mean, it's not, right? It's a game, right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But just before it was kind of like, okay, it changed and now I click done, right? Now it's like animation, sound effects. It goes for like 7 seconds,
So now it feels like you've hit a jackpot at a
yeah, exactly. It's a little intense. It does make it feel more. It's like, wow, this is like an event, right?
Yeah.
But they may need to tone it down just a little bit, I think. But we'll see. Up next, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. So the season cash, so like the season rewards, in a season in Marvel Snap, basically levels 1 through 50 in the season rewards are kind of structured in a certain way. And then after you went beyond level 50, it was just 50 credits every level after. But it now sounds like they've kind of randomized those rewards. But you can get credits, boosters, and sometimes probably at a lower drop rate, gold and variants. I like this in the sense that, I mean, before we were getting credits every time, which is okay. I would say I'm not super excited about the boosters ad, but the ability to get some more gold and some more variants out of this beyond that level 50, I think is a good choice.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an overall good change. I just hit 51. I already opened my 51 for it, but I'm interested to see how often you get different stuff and stuff like that. But yeah, boosters being in it, not great. Boosters don't feel great to open and stuff like that. Credits, I'll take all the credits and gold and variants and stuff. That's cool. But boosters don't feel great to open and stuff like that. But I think it's a more interesting change than just getting 50 credits.
Yep. Agreed. Okay, next up in the general section, we got, since we are adding so many other ways to purchase credits in this patch, credit purchases in the shop are now limited to 1 purchase per day for each tier. I think this is good. It's a healthy choice. There's other ways to unlock credits now, so it kind of slows down the ability to just, kind of that temptation to throw extra money at the game, I guess.
Yeah, they want you to spend them on pulls in the Nexus event.
Yeah, which, so I guess pros and cons. Yeah, they're wanting you to spend money elsewhere. So, so that's kind of the general things. The other things we'll kind of skip over in the general section, but I want to talk a little bit about missions. So they've reworked the weekly missions. So basically, before it was, over the course of a day, you got 6 missions. As long as you completed 2 in a 24-hour period, you kind of unlocked a tick on the weekly tracker. You needed 6 of the 7 days to kind of unlock that. Now it's essentially there's a lot more rewards you can get from kind of the weekly rewards. And to max out, to get kind of your full rewards of the week, you need to complete 35 total daily missions. And let's see if I can do math really quick. I think it's 42 total missions available during the week. So it makes it a little easier if you missed a day where you didn't cash into 2 missions in one day. You don't kind of get closer to missing out on the weekly rewards, if you will. Makes it it's a little less punishing, I guess, to make it easier to get the full week's rewards. And did you have any thoughts on that, or do you think that's a good change, bad change? Did you like it the way it was before?
I think it's fine. I was just looking at something. Sorry, my bad. I was looking at I know that they I'm sure you're going to get to it in a second, but where you can add the gold, you can spend gold to refresh the mission thing. I was just trying to see how much gold that was, and it's 120. So that's interesting that you can do that up to 3 times a day now. But yeah, I think that's a good change, just giving people options to do less missions to get the rewards. It really threw me off talking about the new fancy UI. Like when I first opened it up, it broke my brain. I didn't realize what I was looking at anymore. Yep. It looks so different. I was like, what? What is this? Did I click? Yeah. Did I close this and open another app up? What?
I got a little lost for a second there when I first opened it up as well. The one last change I want to cover here in the general section is they made an update to mission rules. So you no longer make mission progress if you retreat on turn 1, 2, or 3 unless your opponent snapped. I think this is an interesting change. I know that sometimes there's missions where it's like you need to be winning a location with 1 card. So it could be like on turn 2, you could have 2 to 3 cards laid down and be winning lanes, and you could retreat, and it was like you'd get 3 ticks towards accomplishing that goal. Maybe you have to do it 10 times. I know that I took advantage of that sometimes just to close out the mission faster. So now this makes it so it's a little more challenging. You really need to kind of invest into these. Now, I don't know if we'll see different probabilities of certain missions dropping. They didn't make that very clear, but I think it's probably a good change. It makes it so the system can't be abused. You have to actually kind of play games and like intend to win to unlock those. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting change, but probably good for the health of the game.
Yeah, definitely. I'm interested to see if that works for like the season rewards too for the XP.
Oh yeah,
because you get like XP for controlling lanes and stuff. Because I know that there are people out there that are like season pass like 200 because they just farm. They just go into games, play Squirrel Girl, Wasp, and then quit on turn 2 and just do that for 8 hours a day. And so they like season pass level like 200. And so I'm wondering if that's going to affect that and put a stop to that too.
Yeah, I know at least one of the people you're talking about that's brought this up in the Discord a couple of times, and we've actually had him on the show. Yeah. And you know, he's been very clear that he's kind of explained people how this system works and kind of this farming of XP. So yeah, they don't say anything explicitly, so I'd be interested to kind of gather that information from other people, see if they've made that change. Hey everybody, I wanted to jump in here for just a second to tell you about Anchor. Anchor is a tool that I am using to create this podcast and distribute it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and various other podcasting platforms. Anchor is an app you can download for free on the App Store and use to record, edit, add sound effects, etc., and distribute your podcast. I chose to use it because it was very simple to get up and going quickly, and it was free to use. If you have a podcast idea that you've been throwing around in your mind and you'd like to get out there, make sure to download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started and create your podcast today. Well, with that kind of covering the general notes, there's obviously some changes to UI, some additional things, some art, visual effects, audio updates. We're not going to cover those, but feel free to check those out as you review the release notes. But we want to dive here kind of with the bulk of our time to just cover all of the card updates. Again, there's some interesting ones in here, some ones I expected, some that I didn't expect. So let's dive right in. We start off with America Chavez. Now, I thought there may be a change coming here. There's the combo with, of course, now I'm forgetting the name, Jubilee and America Chavez. And so I expected a change there, but they actually changed both cards. So America Chavez originally was a 6 cost, 10 power card. The change here is they just dropped her to 9 power. There's other 6 drops that have 10 plus power. So kind of weakening her a little bit, but you still get that guaranteed pull on turn 6. I think that's interesting. I want to hear your thoughts, but I think we kind of have to talk about it in tandem, honestly, with the Jubilee change, because the Jubilee change is the old text was on reveal, play the top card of your deck to this location. And how the game works is that America Chavez basically sits on the top of your deck. If you were to draw her, you don't. You just draw the next card. So she remains on the top of your deck throughout the course of the game. So she's there was a very high probability of pulling her with Jubilee. Now Jubilee reads on reveal, play a card from your deck to this location. So it's random through any cards remaining in your deck. So it's a much lower chance of pulling the guaranteed Chavez. So you've got the nerf and power to Chavez, and then the nerf, if you will, to Jubilee, and the fact that it kind of pulls a random card. How do you feel about these changes, kind of these 2 different cards, but obviously the combination?
So I think the Chavez change is not the craziest thing, just losing the 1 power. I think the Jubilee change is what's going to make American Chavez see less play, not having that almost guaranteed 10 power off the top. I mean, if they just changed it to 9, people would still run that same thing. I don't think that would sway a lot of people, but I think the Jubilee change is the biggest. I think Jubilee is now better in a deck where you play more big things like Magneto and Giganto and Infinite, and so I think she's fine in those types of decks. It just kind of changes the decks you play her with, but I think that change to Jubilee will affect Chavez play more than the 1 power loss, because Chavez still does. I mean, a lot of decks and stuff use Chavez for like kind of like a deck thinning, that you know that you're going to draw your other cards before you draw. Like you're not going to draw Chavez on 4, so you have a better chance of drawing your Swarm or Ghost Rider or whatever. So
yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, I just split my Chavez again today, so we'll see how much that new split version sees use going forward. So that'll be interesting. Up next is Crossbones. So Crossbones remains a 4-cost, 8-power card. And the text now reads, you can only play this at locations where you are winning. So the developer comment here is, this is mostly a wording change. It only really affects Crossbones' interaction with bar with no name. We think this new text will make the card clearer and easier to understand quickly. So I just want to make sure you understand the same. No functional change. I think they're just cleaning up the language of the text, really just for clarification's sake.
Yeah,
right?
they did it last time. They did it this time. Hopefully they got it as cleaned up as they need to make it.
Yeah. Third time, hopefully there's not a third time's the charm here. I think we'll get Crossbones right now. Up next is an interesting change. Again, a 1 power change here, but Ebony Maw is going from a 1 power 6 power card to a 1 cost 7 power card. And his ability is that, once you play him, you can't play any more cards at that location. But then you can only play him turns 1, 2, and 3. So you can't drop him turn 6 normally. So I think it's good to add a little more power to him. I still don't think he's a great card unless I've seen him played with Invisible Woman. Right? You can play Invisible Woman, lay him down for 1 mana, and then he doesn't flip to the end of the game. And so then you're able to get kind of that 7 mana or that 7 power with other cards. But other than that, I still don't think this change is going to make me playing Ebony Maw a ton.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's one of those cards that's kind of like a buff and a nerf, because it's obviously a buff to the power for you playing it in the Visible Woman interaction you said. But I also saw a lot of people play Viper with it, so you're giving them 7 instead of 6. So I mean, you're still locking that lane down, but you're giving them 1 more power. So it's interesting little tweak.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. That's an interesting combo. I haven't seen that a ton, but that makes a lot of sense. But there is some risk to that, and obviously more risk now with the increased power. So, well, up next is the one I think that I wasn't surprised about. I'm sure you weren't either. Ghost Rider is going from a 3-cost, 3-power card to a 4-cost, 3-power card. The ability remains the same. He can kind of resurrect a discarded card and bring it onto the board. But with this increased power, similar to, we saw kind of the increase from 3 cost to 4 cost with things like Moon Girl and Devil Dino last patch. Kind of that similar feel. I think Ghost Rider was just too easy to get out consistently. So they're trying to make it so it's not just every game here, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think this is a good change, a needed change. I still think it's not quite enough. I think Ghost Rider is probably the best card in the game, and now it's probably still top 5. And maybe that's fine. Maybe they didn't want it just to be the best card. Maybe it being top 5 is just where they want it. But it's very interesting. I mean, you can still turn 6 instead of turn 5, Sif, Ghost Rider, target your high card and get it back. So
yeah,
you're just doing it a turn later.
Yep. So interesting, and we'll see how that plays out and how the usage maybe changes or doesn't change. Up next was change I didn't really see coming, and I don't think it makes that big of a difference personally. So Kazaar was a 4-cost, 5-power card. The ability was to add 1 power to all of your 1-cost cards on the board. The only change here is he's gone from 5 power to 4 power. Thought process here is, he gives you too much power, I guess was their reasoning. So lowering his base power a notch. I don't know. If you've got a bunch of 1-drops on the board and they're still all getting 1 power, that's fine. And lowering his power by 1, I just don't see this making that big of an impact. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's that big of a change. I don't think he really needed to be changed. It is interesting because we'll see it here in a minute with a few of the other cards too. They definitely change a few cards power in the pull 1 to pull 2. And I know I talked about that the last time we talked about patch 2, and I think that's an important thing to keep an eye on, that they are, the deck that was pull 1 to pull 2 players, they only really had one option for a deck, and now you're hitting cards in it again to make those worse. Might not feel great for people going at a slower pace.
Yeah. So interesting. Well, like you say, we'll talk about some of these other cards change, because obviously he affects 1-drops, and we're going to talk about a couple of 1-drops that are no longer 1-drops. So up next, we have Okoye. Okoye received a change in the last patch. She went from buffing cards in your deck +2 power to +1 power, and she dropped to a 1-cost 1 power card. Before, she was a 2-cost 1 power card. Now she is a 2-cost again, but she still only buffs your cards in your deck by 1. I mean, I get it, because how many times do you start a game, right? What percentage of the time is you maybe drop down Okoye on turn 1 and your opponent does too, or if you're not playing Okoye, your opponent drops Okoye on turn 1, right? It's kind of an add to most decks, and so this obviously tries to make it so it's not. I think it goes with the philosophy of you don't want any card to be played by all players, right? You want people to experiment and try other things. So I think that's kind of where this change is at. It's kind of pushing people to, you can still keep Okoye, but it's not going to be every deck.
Yeah, if your deck still wants that buff, then she is still good and playable. But like before, she was, every deck. You start building a deck. Oh, yep, Okoye goes in. Yep, like you just don't pass her when you're scrolling down. So I think that will definitely change with this, and we'll see how much play she still sees. But I think she's still perfectly fine for the decks that really want that buff.
Yeah. Well, up next is another 1-drop that is no longer a 1-drop, which is Scarlet Witch. Scarlet Witch was a 1-cost 2 power card. Again, her ability is she changes the location where she's played to a random location. And now she is a 2-cost 3 power card. So again, they basically said she's a little too good at what she does as far as playing around on ideal locations at the 1 cost. And so they've increased her cost to kind of make it so she's not, to kind of nerf her a little bit, but they've obviously tried to give her the power buff to make that feel a little less bad. But yeah, I don't know if, again, it's kind of hard because Scarlet Witch and Okoye were kind of go-to 1-cost cards for any kind of zoo deck, or where you're just trying to have a couple solid 1-drop cards you could play early in the game. And I don't know if I'm going to play Scarlet Witch as much with this change.
Yeah, I think the decks that really like an Apocalypse deck, like Mindscape, just makes the game unplayable. So decks like that will probably still keep Scarlet Witch so they can change those just death nail locations. But yeah, it's like you're gonna, if you're just putting it in as a 1-drop for Kazaar or whatever, you're obviously not thinking about it as a 1-drop anymore, but you're thinking about, do I even need this now?
Yep. So I think honestly, I think Scarlet Witch will see less play, in my opinion, than Okoye will with these changes. Both of them going to 2 costs. My guess, again, I could be wrong, I think Okoye is going to see more play than Scarlet Witch.
Yeah, it's interesting that everything but Storm, but Scarlet Witch, Rhino, and Magic that all changes the location has 3 power now. I know some of my buddies were talking about a Cerebro deck with 3. You can run all 3 of those now.
Yeah, that is. I hadn't even thought about that, and I unlocked Cerebro in the last couple of days, and that's an interesting.
Well, see, now you can change all the locations in that deck.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Now I want to go check that out, try it out. Well, up next we have Scorpion. This is one I didn't see coming. Scorpion was a 3-cost 3 power card. He basically lowers the power of every card in your opponent's hand by 1 at the time he's revealed. He's dropped to a 2-cost 2 power card. So power going down by 1, but the cost going down. I think it's an interesting change. It's not one I really thought. I occasionally see Scorpion played. I think it's mostly by bots, to be honest, and maybe that's part of the reasoning. I don't really see a lot of human players using Scorpion. I think this is interesting just because the lower cost obviously you can play it a turn earlier, but also it just makes it easier to combine with another card on a later turn. Like turn 5, you can play a 2-drop and a 3-drop, right? If you're going at somebody that's going to try to flood the board, like a Sarah or some kind of zoo type deck where they're going to try to place down a bunch of cards on turn 6, you can kind of maximize minusing the power on turn 5 a little easier. It feels a little easier being a 2 cost instead of a 3 cost. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I feel like they definitely have a list of cards that are like the least played cards by players. And I think that's why Colossus and Craven got changed last time. And I'm pretty sure Scorpion was on that list this time. They're like, well, we got to bump him up now. And so I think this is a good change. I don't remember. I was going to look this up earlier, but I didn't get a chance to. But do you remember if Scorpion is a pull 3 card or if it's pull 2?
I believe it's a pull 2 card.
Okay, so that kind of helps negate the fact, because I do think this is a good change of them, hitting other pull 1 and 2 cards. This is giving you a pull 1 or 2 card that gives you definitely more playability. So.
Yeah, it'll help you kind of build some more solid decks. Again, a good counter card for any deck that's trying to lay down a bunch of cards later in the game. So, up next we have Strong Guy. And I saw a change coming to Strong Guy. They'd kind of alluded to that in some of the comments. But I didn't. This is a little bit more than I thought, for better, for worse. Strong Guy, as you remember, his ability is that if your hand is empty, he gets +6 power. And before he was a 2 cost, 3 power card. So just the nature of you get some early discard cards in the game. You could pretty consistently get him to pop his ability and to be +6 power, which make him basically a 2/9. And I think that was a little too consistent for the developer's taste. But now he's a 4 cost, 4 power card. So he still retains the ability. So he can be a 4/6, but that's obviously going to be a much taller order to ask. You can't play him until later in the game and then being able to clear your hand after that.
Yeah, for sure. I think this was a big change. I think a lot of people saw that Strong Guy was going to be changed, and I was reading the developer notes, like clearly it's an outlier that for a 2 cost. So I think that definitely need to be changed. They want to keep it. You still have the strategy, the option for an empty hand deck. But making it a 4/10, if you can get the discard off, is definitely way different and way less good than 2/9.
Yeah. So this will be interesting because there's a lot of kind of decks based around most cards for mostly cards from pool 1 and pool 2 that build around Strong Guy, and I'm interested to see if that kind of fades away a little bit. So we will see. Up next is an interesting one. I didn't even know this was a thing. Hulkbuster now no longer grants his cost to the attached card. I didn't even know that was happening. Did you know that was happening?
So I only know that because someone that we both know, Cqrbon, that's been on before, me and him's been hanging out and talking a lot. And the other day, for the past couple of days, he's been running a Deadpool deck. And at first, he had Hulkbuster in it. And on the board, it was still, a lot of people thought it was a bug. If you Hulkbustered onto Deadpool, it still showed it was a 1 cost and could still be Killmongered. But once it came to your hand, it had the extra cost, which made it worse because now Deadpool's not a 1 drop. So I did know that was happening solely because of that.
Oh, interesting. No, that makes a lot of sense. And that obviously would be a reason not to play it, right, on Deadpool. Yeah. But now you can really see that as a buff to some of these combos, right?
Oh, absolutely. We were talking earlier, when he saw the interaction, he took Hulkbuster out, and then after seeing this change, he's putting it back in. So,
oh, yeah. I mean, 100%. You want to play that every game. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, up next, we've kind of alluded to this a little bit, but Killmonger and Sandman are available earlier on the collection level road. I don't think they really tell us. I'm assuming they're moving into pool 2.
That's what I wish they would have just said that, but I mean, that has to be what they mean, right?
And you and me are obviously both in pool 3, so it's like, don't really know. But interesting thing, it says, the next 2 cards you unlock will be Killmonger and Sandman. But you said you unlocked. Oh, okay, yeah. Two
it's
cards.
The next card. So the next time I pull a card, it will be Sandman.
So you're guaranteed, but then obviously it's a percentage drop to get a card. So
yeah.
that's where I was confused. That makes little sense. So it's like, you're going to get him, but yeah, that's interesting. I'd already got Sandman, so like mine was Killmonger, and I pulled him. So excited to have him, and I think that's a good change. I think Killmonger is a great counter card for some of the pool 1, pool 2 decks, and it was one that felt worse than others. I mean, I know there's complaints about still kind of the idea that you unlock cards randomly in different orders. Some people feel like short end of the stick, bad luck, etc., which I think is valid, right? But I think Killmonger felt a little worse than some others because he was just so solid as a counter against a lot of decks that some people were lucky to get Killmonger and others not so much. And so I think giving kind of all players earlier on an option to get him is a good change.
Yeah, I think for sure. I think both of these cards really help fight, those rush type decks, even though they've been hurt with other changes too. But giving options for players sooner to fight those are definitely good options too. I haven't played with Sandman, I haven't had him, but I've had Killmonger for a long time, and he's very good and opens up a lot of interesting plays with him. So it's cool that people are going to get it earlier because they give you other hate cards earlier, like Armor and Enchantress and Cosmo and stuff. So these kind of feel in line with those, and you should probably get those earlier.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that kind of brings us to the end. One last general update, which I think is interesting, and I'm assuming we'll see this frequently. Thor can now appear from effects that add random cards, such as Agent 13 or X-Mansion. So I think we'll probably see that just as time goes on. Obviously, as new cards get added to the game, they'll get added to kind of the random polls, etc. So overall, Lootmuncher, what's your feeling? What's your, are you kind of thumbs up, thumbs down, thumb in the middle as far as a feeling about the overall patch, the overall changes this time around?
If I can use like both thumbs to make a question mark, is how I feel about this. I definitely want to see. I think this is going to be, be good changes, hopefully. But I think it's just something, going to have to see games. I haven't had a chance to play any games or anything this time. I know before I got to play around with it a little bit before we talked, but I think there's good changes here. I'm definitely happy to see, the strong guy and Ghost Rider, which I'm not sure if it's going to be enough, but Chavez, like the cards that's probably, on the list I was talking about, the highly played cards, they touched them to try to tone them down, and then the underplayed cards boosted them up a little bit. I think those are all very good changes.
Yeah. I'm interested. Like you said, I only played 1 or 2 matches since they made the change. But my main deck that I've been playing with recently has America Chavez, Okoye, and Jubilee.
Yep. So did mine.
Yeah. So I'm like, man, I need to test some new things out, I guess,
Yeah,
which
sure.
is not a bad thing. That's one thing that I will say I've enjoyed, in other card games that I've played. I mean, not always, right? But I kind of get into a rut where I like a certain style, like a certain deck, and I kind of just want to stick with that for a really long time. But already in the beta and, over the last couple months, I'll play a deck for a week or two, and then I completely do a 180 and play a completely different type of deck, right? And I still enjoy it. So I do like that. I feel positive about that. I feel like they're really trying to make changes that allow for people to experiment more, trying to make things evenly played. So really you can kind of create the deck you want, right? So overall, I feel fairly okay about it. But again, like you say, I agree with you. I want to try it out more before I kind of give my final rating, if you will.
Yeah, I do think it's a positive change, or a positive thing that they're doing is that they are willing to touch the cards that feel overplayed and also touch cards that are, underplayed. Like I was talking about that Viper Ebony Maw, like I've probably seen that 2 times in my past 300 games. Like it's not something I see all the time, and I can't tell you the last time I saw a Scorpion that wasn't for sure a bot. So like I think being willing to change cards like that to try to boost them up to is good. You don't want to just keep nerfing everything.
Yep, definitely. Well, Lootmuncher, it's been a pleasure to have you back on again. Really appreciate you jumping on here to cover this. We're recording this about 2 hours after the patch notes have gone live. So we want to obviously get this information out and share our thoughts. But Lootmuncher, before we go, as always, I just want to make sure you have a chance. Tell the listeners best way to support you, best way to follow you, and consume kind of the content around Marvel Snap that you're putting out.
All right. So you can follow me at twitter.com. You can follow me at Lootmuncher0, and it's the same thing on Twitch, Lootmuncher0. And something I haven't had a chance to talk with you yet, but I've gotten together with Cqrbon and a couple other gamers, and we've actually been doing something that we've been calling Cube-Rush, where we get 3-4 streamers together and we play for like an hour, and it's usually me and Cqrbon hosting it and like spectating on everyone, jumping in Discord calls and kind of running the commentary back and forth while 3 or 4 other streamers play and see how many cubes they can amass in an hour span. And we've done 3 so far, and they've all been really fun. The past 2 have come down like to the last game, and it's been really fun. We definitely plan on doing those probably every Wednesday. We have one going on tomorrow. I do believe the start time is 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. But we plan on doing them on Wednesdays because that's when we get new locations. And then we've done ones sporadically. We did one on a Friday, one on a Sunday. But I just wanted to shout that out because that's something that a lot of community members and streamers have really said that they like. So we like trying to put those together.
Well, that's awesome. Yes, I have seen you guys doing those. So make sure, go follow. I'll say Cqrbon as well, obviously, but make sure you're following Lootmuncher to catch those 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time Wednesdays to see a lot of great content creators kind of coming together. Really just, there's not really competitive mode in the game, and you guys have kind of built that in through the streaming platform. So make sure to check that out and make sure to follow and support Lootmuncher. Lootmuncher, thanks again for being here. Listeners, thank you for listening as always. Again, we will have another episode coming out soon that will be covering more in-depth thoughts about the changes to the progression system, to the new events, the Nexus events, etc. So make sure you're following the podcast and make sure you're following us on Twitter. And as always, thanks for listening, and we will see you next time. Can't Stop Snapping is a podcast written, produced, recorded, and hosted by Michael Thurman. Thanks for listening.